Hey everyone, and we are live, and welcome back. It is an amazing Fire Day because what is it today?
Fire Day!
It is Fire Day! Hey everyone, I'm Vanessa Lane. I'm your CCO of the Phoenix Factor and Girls on Fire, and you are?
Brandy Holloway.
And we've got an amazing fiery of a guy. Yes, I'm going to say it again. We have amazing fiery of a guy today on Fire Day. We've got Tim Alison. I'm going to give you a little brief about him. Tim Alison is a business and a mindset mentor and founder of Screw the Naysayers, an organization that helps experienced leaders harness the power of their wisdom and experience to create a business. He's also a public speaker, an author, and a host of the globally recognized Screw the Naysayers. You know, his entrepreneur career, Brandy, began at the age of 31.
Oh, wow.
At 31, where he walked away, get this, from a six-figure job, and he moved his family to a little fishing village in Nova Scotia. And let me tell you, the naysayers laughed when he started his educational software business, but they stopped laughing when he hit $10 million. Boom.
Nice.
Boom.
Wow.
So welcome, Tim.
Hey, I'm honored to be here, ladies.
So Tim, that's what it says on paper. But we want to know a little bit about the backstory. What was it like? You said you left this six-figure job. I mean, what was going on that made you go, this is not for me?
Yeah, I'm not sure it was quite that easy either. You know, there was a lot going on, Vanessa, Brandy. I mean, I hit success really early in my life, and many times when I look back, I think some of it came too fast. But I had been raised to be hungry. You know, I was the kid in school that nobody expected to really be much. I was a guy who couldn't get a date to his senior prom, had some health issues and all of those kind of things. I know it's hard to believe, eh? But the thing is, you get out of school and then you get into a level playing field where people don't have these preconceived ideas about you, and it's just about how hard you work. And so I'd been trained to get on that corporate ladder, and it was a ruthless time. Like the way we'd been raised was that, it didn't matter how you got to the top as long as you got to the top. So, basically I was just not a very nice guy, but I just sailed up and I moved up the corporate ladder. By the time I was 28 years old, I was making six figures. By the time I was 30, I was managing, 3 offices in Canada, basically half of the sales offices in the country, reported to me. So I was the poster child for what success is supposed to look like. Here I was, I had a great job, I had a wife, by the time I was 31, I had 2 kids, a boy and a girl. We used to call it a millionaire's family. Had a beautiful house that backed onto a park. I had everything that I had been raised to believe were the keys to happiness. But what people didn't see is that I was miserable. I was traveling all the time. My kids were growing up without a father. I'm honest enough to admit I was abusing alcohol and food and everything in a big way. I mean, I had an unlimited expense account. And whenever I'd hit town, everybody wanted to go out with me. And they didn't want to go to the cheap places. And they didn't want to go to the places without the expensive wine and the rich food. And I felt like crap. And I honestly remember, ladies, waking up I can't say waking up, becoming conscious. 3 o'clock in the morning, I was sitting on the toilet, naked, crying. And I couldn't tell you why. I just didn't know why. But I mean, the job was just so stressful. And I had a boss who believed in a big stick, big carrot. So when you did well, he rewarded us like you wouldn't believe. Like I was actually in the top 2% of wage earners in the country at the age of 29. But when things weren't going well, and for him, if things weren't going well, he meant like today. He'd always say, you're only as good as what you've done for me today. It doesn't matter if you give me 5 years of all this kind of stuff. If you can't do it today, and it was killing me. And I've said now many times, and I believe this to be true, I think I would have been dead or divorced within 5 years if I hadn't quit that job.
Oh, wow.
And I believe that probably both and probably sooner. The thing that complicated life for me is that my wife's from this, she's Acadian of heritage, which are the very first French settlers that ever came to Canada. And so she's from this tiny little fishing village in rural Nova Scotia. And we had lived there briefly when we first got married, and I fell in love with the place. And so not only did I decide to quit the job, but I decided that we were going to, or we decided that we were going to go back out to this little fishing village and try and make a go of it to raise our kids in a safe community where we don't worry about locking the doors and all this kind of stuff. But you know, if anybody could see these hands, the people that were working in my community then, and probably still some today, they were working on fishing boats, they were building homes, they were cutting down trees, logging. That's not me. I'm not cut out for that kind of stuff. So I had to start my own job. Uh, the revisionist thinking that a lot of people seem to, the perception a lot of people have when they read about my story is they'll say silly things like, man, Tim, you must have had it all figured out. You know, the truth of the matter is I didn't have a effing clue. I just knew that I had to leave, and I really desperately wanted to be back in this community, and that that I was going to have to start a business. And I knew something about educational software, so I said, "I'll try that." And but it was stepping off the cliff into, you know, unknown territory. Just fundamentally believing that, you know, that it would work out.
So I want you to touch on this because that's something you've been talking about the unknown and being overwhelmed.
Yeah, I actually did a fun little acronym last night with our ladies talking about overwhelm. And I think, you know, a big thing, even prior to that, one of the things that I think that you touched on that is super important going into overwhelm is the picture that we see, the picture that we think we're supposed to be as entrepreneurs and what we're supposed to be, you know, going into business versus what it's really like. So you've reached a point where, you know, like you're saying, screw the naysayers, you know, really screw all the BS, because that is not how it works. There is no such thing as an overnight success. And a lot of the overwhelm and much worse emotions that people go through as an entrepreneur and as in a business, I love touching on that, because I'm like, you're basically putting their opinions and their BS opinions, trust me, their unrealistic expectations in front of your own happiness and your own success. A lot of people would be, I think, much more successful if they screwed the naysayers.
Yeah. You know, you pretty much summed up why at age 60 I started this second venture, Screw the Naysayers, because you're right. You know, both of you, I think it might have been Vanessa that said it, but you're right in saying that I'm at an age where I have the freedom to just say whatever the hell it is I feel like. You know, I wrote an article about, actually it's not out yet, but I've written an article about the advantages of starting a business at a somewhat more mature age. And one of the things is that I think we get to the point in life where we can say, I don't give a damn what anybody else thinks. I'm just going to speak my truth. And one of the things that certainly we both have observed, Brandy, on social media in particular, is there's so many false prophets out there. It's easy. It's simple. I can help you live a life of luxury where you lie on the beach and sip Mai Tais, and you don't even have to like what you're selling, but it's all about passive revenue. And if you're not a millionaire in the first year, you're an utter failure. And it's all pure unadulterated BS. You know, businesses seem easier, and there are all these advantages that we get with technology. Like I'm talking to you from this little fishing village, and you know, we have things that we can do with technology which are tremendously empowering. But a business is still a business, you know, and you don't become an instant success. And it really upsets me when I see these people, you know, especially knowing that 99% of the people that are out there preaching these easy systems have actually never done it themselves. They don't actually know how to start a business. All they know how to do is advise you on how to start a business to tell other people how to start a business. Well, I don't know about you. If I'm going to hire somebody as a coach, and I still at this stage of my life, I have a coach, I pay them a lot of money. But when I hire a coach, I hire somebody who's done what I want to do and has proven that he can help other people do what I want to do. I don't hire somebody who says, I've figured out some secret sauce that makes me smarter than everybody else that came before me. And because, you know, it's the old saying out, that, acts like a duck, quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck. And that's just and it's kind of a crazy analogy, but it's really bad, the impact it's having on mindset. And people with legitimate business opportunities that have all the chances in the world of giving them what they want in their life quit. And that's the number one reason businesses fail. Like everybody thinks businesses fail because of lack of financial resources. And look, startup capital is important. I'm not minimizing that, but the stats tell us that, that 95 or 98% of businesses don't go down because of bankruptcy. They go down because the entrepreneur just gives up. It's just too hard, and if you're setting yourself and comparing yourself against false images, you know, you it's just hard. It's just bad. And so this is this has definitely been a big part of the mission that we have. I mean, we threw Screw the Naysayers out there. I mean, that's the thing that I want to say too, and then I'm talking too much. But the thing about Screw the Naysayers, it's such an eclectic brand that it's attracted people with so many different interpretations of that, and there's room for everybody under that umbrella. It's attracted women and men, but more women who have faced terrible adverse circumstances in childhood or in early teen years. And they see it as, well, people were, that they didn't let that define who they were going to become. And it's attracted people that have faced enormous health challenges and have been told that they'll never amount to anything. And they see it as an umbrella that you can come under and say, I don't care what other people think. And it's attracted people that want to change the world, that really, sincerely believe that they have something to contribute here that's more than just about making money. And that's the community I'm on a mission to grow globally.
Awesome. Awesome. So I want to give a big shout out, and I want you to give shout outs too. So we've got Tanika Boone, Bridget Barr, Jennifer McClure-McKinley. She was just on with us. She says, so nice to hear a man and his honesty and vulnerability. Let me tell you, who do you got on?
I actually just started a watch party, so I've got Tim Burt, Nate Woodard, Jenny Goodbread. I've got some more people popping on right now. I lost my signal, so.
Got it. Well, you know what? Tim, you hit on something. It's not just the younger generation, too. We've got the older generation now doing this, where, we've got this generation that are going through school, and my husband's personally experienced, where you've got new ones coming into college, and then their parents reach out and go, well, what do you mean my kid's getting an F? What do you mean he's not an A student? What do you mean? He's supposed to graduate. He's supposed to. Yeah. She's supposed to go with flying colors. There's no supposed to in this world. We all have to work at it. I mean, Brandy will tell her story, but I started video editing because I got sick, not because I went to film school. And I did all the work because I did the work, just like you, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, completely self-taught for a long time. There was no school. I dropped out of college.
So, I mean, we have these stories, and like you said, people have to work at it. They have to work at it. They have to work at it. And not only that, but I read some of your story from 2 posts ago, and you said that you did something where you not only worked at it, but you researched. You researched whether or not your idea was going to be good before you decided, this is it, I'm going to jump on all in.
Yeah, I mean, what you're talking about there, I mean, I was in business at the time. And I had a business going, but I mean, it was really just paycheck to paycheck type of thing, and without the assurance of the paycheck, because I had to continue to make the money coming into the business, and I had an opportunity that looked kind of interesting, but I've learned over the years, don't go launch something before you go ask somebody if they'd be interested, in doing business with you. And so asking for help is a lot easier than trying to sell somebody something. And so what I did, that particular product was one of the world's first, what was called an integrated learning system. So it taught math and literacy skills to adults who had fallen through the crack and were wanting to up their, and it looked at me, I knew a lot about the technology, and I knew it was really good use of the technology, but I wasn't a teacher. I had no idea whether the stuff that was in there was any good or not. And so instead of going out and trying to sell it to somebody, I reached out and asked, a bunch of people in the industry if they could help me. I said, I'm interested in bringing this product on, but I need some honest advice. And it's funny because you guys aren't too far from there. I mean, I flew one of the educational consultants that worked for that company up, and she came up from West Virginia. And she arrived in Halifax and talked to a bunch of Canadian educators speaking with this deep Southern drawl that nobody could understand. And so for Canadian educators, that was about a flag, a red, like your hair, Vanessa, waving in their face saying, you don't belong here type of thing. And she didn't know it, but I told the audience, I said, what I want you to do is ask her every difficult question you could possibly think of so that we can get a handle on this. And they got into the spirit of that. But what happened by the time it was over, the answers just kept coming back. Oh, yes, great question. And there'd be an explanation. I'm watching. And by the time the meeting was up, I'm realizing that there's something going on here, because there were lots of reasons for them to throw her out the door, but in fact they weren't. There were things that needed to be addressed, but so I do think that, anytime, people are looking at launching a business, and it's so much easier. You don't have to go have those physical meetings. You can reach out to people. You can do landing pages and ask people about it. But huge difference if you call up an influencer in an industry and said, I need your help to assess something. And that sets an expectation that you're not trying to sell them something. But the truth is, if they really like it, they're going to buy it anyway. But you'd set the completely different expectation. And asking for help is a lost art. That's another thing I'll say. I really see it not being done. And it was, when in my day, that was the only way you could get to a senior decision maker. You couldn't get through the secretary in those days that were the gatekeepers with a sales pitch. It was not, they were too well trained. And now we assume just because we can send an email or a LinkedIn message or something that it's going to work. It's not going to work. But asking for help has a much bigger probability. Something that says, I really respect you as an individual. Drop something that indicates that you know something about them, or about their company, or about their content. Sometimes it's as easy as saying, that article on LinkedIn really resonated. I'm wondering if I could get some advice on this particular, and the other mistake people will make, and somebody I know on this call used the same phrase with me recently, but never, ladies, use the word, I want to pick your brain. Don't say that. Say, I want to ask for help. Pick your brain is, I want free advice. Ask for help is, hey, I'm a human being, you're a human being.
True.
Can you, you'll get such a different response.
Yeah.
Very cool.
I was going to touch on something that he had said for my own personal failure that I talk about quite often is just because also that you're really good at something doesn't mean that you're going to be good at business. So rolling into asking for help, that's something I talked about last night with overwhelm. A lot of the times you're overwhelmed really simply because you are not asking for help. You are not. And there are so many, I was broke when I lost my business. So to build this new one, I got a lot smarter. There are so many other free resources. You can go to YouTube, Google, and find all of these things to start learning. And then, as you mentioned, Tim, just simply reaching out and saying, I absolutely loved what, the post you wrote or the article you wrote. And I'd love to get more information, learn more about you. That's definitely the way to go. I think all of us experienced that on LinkedIn quite a bit. And so I also recommend to people, if you're doing that, just ask for a consultation, because then you're saying, hey, I might want to work with you, but I really need more information. Exactly. I think that's fair.
People will speak with you if they believe that there's an open opportunity and if it feels good on both sides. Like any kind of anybody who's not a charlatan who's trying to fleece you for your money doesn't want to have a sales call in the first conversation. It's the last thing in the world they want to have. They simply want to explore what the problem is, understand the problem, and identify if there's an opportunity to help. And that needs to be done without any kind of pressure or expectation or anything else, other than I'm going to at least help you try and drill down on what your big problem is. The other thing that I want to comment on, though, Brandy, in line to what you're saying there, it's really interesting to me that I find something very ironic. Most of the entrepreneurs that I meet, especially the ones that are just getting started, if you ask them why, like why did you decide to go on your own, independence is going to be if it's not the first thing out of their mouth, it's out in some format. They want to be their own boss. They want the freedom to control their own schedule. It doesn't mean they don't want to work hard, but if there's a children's event at 3 p.m. or something, they want to be able to go do that and then maybe do some work later at night to make up for it or whatever. So they really value time. Like when I quit my job, I was saying I value time with my family more than I value the money I was being paid. And I've talked to so many people who will say that. They'll say it's not about the money, it's about the independence. But then here's the ironic part of it. As soon as they start their business, they start to value money more than time. But what I mean by that is that they'll start and they'll be struggling with something. And they'll be talking to somebody that can tell them, after a certain amount of time, I can look at most business opportunities. And I could probably tell you in half an hour where your major roadblock is and then start to lay out, suggestions or point you. Might be I can help you, might be somebody else can help you. But as soon as somebody says there's going to be a cost associated with you saving time and money, they say, oh no, money's precious and I have to take care of it. So what they're really saying is, I don't care if it takes me 3 years to do something I could do in 3 months, because I don't want to risk the money. And it's just, they go from one mindset to the other and they're so completely unaware of it. And it's one of the biggest reasons for business failures. Like I've had a business coach, for the last 30 years. They've changed over the years. I was blessed for for a number of those years. I wasn't paying for it. It was just a mentor. Rest in peace, Roy. Somebody really changed my life. But if you don't have somebody in your life that has done what you have done or done what you want to do, you're missing out on the elimination of so much pain. And the other thing I say to everybody, anybody who's a new stage entrepreneur, folks, it's true you can start a business today with a computer or maybe even just with an iPhone, as you guys are proving, and a brain. You don't need a lot, eh? But businesses consume money. And I promise you that if you stay in business for 3 years, you're going to spend $30,000 to $50,000 that you never anticipated spending. I don't care what business you're in. I don't care if you don't need physical infrastructure. You're going to spend $30,000 to $50,000. Now, you can work with somebody that can offer you advice to allow you to spend that money wisely, or you can invest all your time and blow most of that money and either have to start all over again, or unfortunately, this is why we keep seeing those ridiculous stats on business failure. Because you run out of, there's only so much, I don't care who you are. I had a moment a few weeks ago where I had a moment where I reached out and gave my coach more crap than he certainly didn't deserve it, but he took it, But it happens to all of us. But you got to have support structure around you. And you can't turn to us, like my spouse but Debbie's been the support of my life forever. But, so she'll support me and believe me, but doesn't want me whining and complaining about business. That's just not. I mean, when I'm out of the business, she wants me to be present as a husband and a father. And, this is a true story. I'll admit it on this huge show. In my 20s, I was so messed up in that job that I was coming home too tired for sex. That is not supposed to happen to a man, Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, I learned. But I'm telling you, that's what your mindset will do to you. You get so caught up and worried about money and meeting other people's expectations. And yeah, outside looking in, I was wearing $1,000 suits in the 1980s. I was wearing gold jewelry. I didn't care about any of that stuff growing up. I had monogram shirts. None of that stuff was important to me, but it came with the job. And then I convinced myself for 3 years that, in my book, I described it as if I was standing under a leaky bag of cat urine because I knew I was miserable. And I knew I needed to quit. Not that I really know what that feels like, but I was paralyzed with fear, because I just felt that and then I had to stop and say, well, I don't need to wear a $1,000 suit. I don't need to have all my clothes tailor-made. I don't need to wear gold jewelry. Debbie doesn't expect me every time. Like I would come back from a sales trip and feel guilty about being away, and I'd go out and buy her $800 worth of jewelry or something. It's still in her drawer. She hardly ever wore the stuff. She didn't care. Would much happier, if I'd been around to take the kids camping or those kind of things. So it's a rambling way to get back to them. It just sort of popped into my head.
Well, it is true. It is true, Tim, that we must invest in ourselves. We must, because like you said, when you're starting things up, it's the last thing you want to do. Oh, I don't want to spend money here, and I don't want to spend money here. But here's the thing. We don't know it all. And we can't be so into ourselves that we think we do. We don't know it all, and we can't do it all. And we cannot. It's best to invest in yourself for the future. And like you said, even once you do and when you start, like you said in your post, you started investing in your future and putting the money back into the business. And people don't do that either. They don't do that. They're like, no, I'm going to hoard the money. But then the company ends up dying because they're not investing in the future of that business. So we have to invest in ourselves. And we have to also invest in others. We cannot be great at everything. And we can learn anything. But we have to also give that knowledge to somebody else and go, you know what, taxes are not my thing. Somebody else is going to do my taxes, because literally it's like, that is true. Taxes are not my thing. God bless it. Somebody else do that for me, please.
Yeah. No, it's absolutely true. And, the other thing is that it's very hard to have the degree of self-awareness that's required to answer some of the questions honestly. So like a lot of the coaching I do, and and much of this is stuff that Ron and I, he's developed much of it. And some of the questions we'll ask will seem so simple. But it's when you put your answer down and somebody says, nah, I mean, it's too easy to take the easy road. Like, here's a question that I love to ask people if they've been in business for a while. Why should people do business with you instead of, the other 14 million people that are saying they're doing the same thing? And watch people stumble with their answer. Just watch them. But then they'll say, well, they'll start writing down all sorts of nonsensical things. There's not good answers, and it's just, I don't think we'll ever reach the degree of self-awareness where having somebody from the outside doesn't help. I know even at 60, 61, when I got, this brand took off on me, guys. I mean, or ladies. I started this business, I didn't even start Screw the Naysayers as a business. I started it just as a movement. But as it's growing and all, I mean, I knew I needed some help sort of getting some clarity on where I wanted to go. And, you just have to have people around you, to ask questions, who you can trust to give you unvarnished truth. Because that's the other problem. Media's and LinkedIn, I'm sorry, I love the platform. It's where all my guests come from. It's where all my business come from. But it's become a love fest. Stop it. If somebody says something that you don't agree with, you have to be able to, it's not cruel to say, I don't agree. That's as long as you do it respectfully. But you know what, Brandy? A lot of people do. And you'll get people that will chastise you for making a comment that's not meant to be personal.
It's happened to me.
You're actually trying to help the person. Yeah. We're actually trying to help people. But it's become, well, if you don't have something positive to say, don't say it. Well, it doesn't mean that I want to say something negative. But if you put a piece of information out into the universe that other people are going to consume, and it doesn't align with what my experiences have been, I want to be able to say. And there's just, it's great to have cheerleaders. We all need cheerleaders. We all need the one person or 2 or 10 people who fundamentally believe in us no matter what. Doesn't matter. They're just going to say you can do it. We need that. But you also need the person who says, we're 100% convinced you can do it, but we're not convinced that you will do it the way you're doing it. And if you don't have that honesty in your life, you really expose yourself to a lot of totally unnecessary pain. That's the irony of it. I mean, it's I do. I just find it, I understand the human motivation around hoarding money, but for people that have basically said, I value time more than money, then I instantly turn around and switch it. And I watch these people suffer. I watch there are people on social media who I'm looking at 18 months into their business and I still don't have a clue what they do. I really, and I track them and I talk, but I don't have a clue what they really do, to make a living. And if I can't figure it out, I got a news flash for you. Nobody else can, and this is why, I mean, we've got so many people just soldiering along, just making enough, just getting by. I always say, and because I learned this the hard way too. Like, I thought leaving that corporate job was a step back. I believed the one thing I didn't realize at the time is that all those naysayers had gotten in my head, and I had bought into the idea that I could have a lifestyle or I could have that great career, but I couldn't have both. And I was 3 years into it, and that's the gentleman's name I mentioned before, Roy Zabrik was his name. He's gone now, but I met Roy, a Polish descent Bostonian, at a sales conference in San Diego or something like that. And he's having a Tanqueray martini or something, and I'm telling him my story, and he says to me, so what the hell are you doing? I said, well, what do you mean? So you got all this success and everything, and you're sitting out there and you're messing around with a little $50,000 or $100,000 business. I said, oh, but Roy, look where I'm at and everything. He says, now this will really, for all of you youngsters out there, and that's what anybody since the internet, he would say to me, this is what he said to me. He says, Tim, I mail my check to American Express every month, because that's how we used to have to pay our credit card bills, folks. Believe it or not, you had to write a check, put it in an envelope. And he said, if it goes to some place in North Dakota or South Dakota, I don't know where the hell it is. He says, I don't care. Why would people care where you're living, and believe that you couldn't build a business? And, it was that moment, it was that intervention that, all of a sudden, instead of using my location as an excuse, I started using it as an advantage. And, like, I live in a beautiful part of the country. Atlantic Canada in the summertime is gorgeous. I started hosting customer events in Nova Scotia. And I would say, hey, come on out instead of me flying all over the country to have 40 meetings, why don't you all come out? There's this lovely resort. I'll buy you a hotel room for a couple nights for you and your spouse. You pay your expenses to get here. We'll have a conference, and with no selling, we'll just talk about the big issues that are impacting, your business. It was crazy. I spent $25,000, and I probably got, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of business, because I had 30 or 40 of the most senior decision makers in my market sitting there sipping wine, listening to Acadian fiddle music and Acadian dancers. And I wasn't selling them at all. I was just building relationships, but it's all, so I went on that rambling story because I want people to think about entrepreneurship as career progression, not taking a step back. It's career progression. Why should you get less out of the things you want in life just because you've gone out on your own? Do not accept that you have to get less money, or that you can't grow something, much bigger, or that you can't have a really meaningful impact, because most of us are also motivated. Aside from independence, most of the people I talk to have some burning passion, something that they really want to influence in the world. So, it's mindset, like career progression. How can I take this? Because by setting the goals, not just financial, but in, all of the other things we want in our life and in our business, we set them high. It's never the end that counts anyway. It's just the journey we're on to get there. But if the journey we're on is just to get, like I told people for 3 years, my goal was to put food on the table and keep a roof over my head. And guess what? That is exactly what I did for 3 years of my life. That was dumb, and I never would have broken out of that cycle if Roy hadn't given me that kick, and so, it's the opportunities today. I believe there's never been a better time in the history of mankind and womankind, however we choose to describe it, to start a business. Never. And I think honestly that experienced people are actually better positioned to do that than younger people. We cede so much advantage to the younger generations because they were born with the technology in their teeth. And so they are way better. They my daughter and, even people younger than her can do things with technology, 3 things at a time faster than I could do one of them. But I've got a lifetime of business experience. I've got a lifetime of life experience. I've had a wife, deal with ovarian cancer and overcome it. I've said goodbye to people that I cared about and, watch them lose fights with battles like that. When I face adversity in business, there's not much that can happen in business that's going to really feel very challenging compared to those kind of things. I've solved problems my whole life. I've networks of people that I've met. I know how to create relationships. I know how to start conversations. And these are things, back to a little point Vanessa was making about school, but these are things really that are not being instilled in young people. So we as people that I would say 40 or up have a gigantic opportunity. Technology, as you pointed out, Ray, technology can be learned. If a guy like me, that I don't do it anymore, but I literally did every aspect of my podcast. I had somebody help me get it set up, but then I did it on my own. I recorded my podcast episodes. I edited my podcast episodes. I recorded the individual, introductions. I merged them all together. I upload them onto the, into my host. All things that a 20-year-old says, yeah, so what? Well, I'm telling you, it is a so what. It took me a good bit to do it, but I can do that. Because that's the other thing. We've got a lifetime of proving that we know how to learn. So what makes us think that we can't figure this out? And this is back to the point Brandy made about all of the nonsense and the noise that's out there. It's all these false people suggesting that it's a world where it's so easy. And if you don't instantly put something up on, like first day you put your show up, if you didn't have 500 people watching live, what a total failure, life just doesn't work like that. We grow community one person at a time. And I'd rather have 100 people. I'd rather have 100 people listening to my podcast loyally, relating to the topics, engaging in discussion, than 10,000 people sitting in I'm not going to name a country, but where many of these organizations that will sell you, any podcast in the world, you want downloads, you can buy them. They're trying to, they say they're trying to stop the bots, but they can't stop human beings sitting there going click, 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 in server rooms and that's all that happens. What's that? Mm-hmm. Doesn't mean anything. If I get one conversation on an episode, if I get one new conversation that says, I just found your podcast and I loved what you talked about, I'm going back through your back episodes, and I got a smile on my face for the rest of the week. And it's just, if you play the long game with these kind of things, because most people aren't going to play the long game. So if you're willing to defer gratification, that's another thing that I did talk about in that, that article that you were referencing, Vanessa. I mean, The willingness to defer gratification, and as you said, to put money back into the business and to invest in your business, that's a differentiator between somebody who's going to create a business and somebody that's going to create a job. If all you want to do is, replace, instead of taking a salary, you just want to trade your time for money, and, you can probably do that. Well, you can do that. But, you're always going to be hustling in that next job. If you want to be at that spot in 5 years or 10 years, where you're taking, 8 weeks to travel around the world. And when you're there, by the way, meeting up with people that you've met in your business and having a great time doing it, you can do that. But, you've got to be willing to defer. And we've got a generations who are looking for instant gratification. Business doesn't provide instant gratification. It does if you take it in the right places. If you can take gratification from, I got one more person listening to, your live show on Friday that says, this is great, I'm never going to miss another one, score. That's, if you take gratification from that. But if you take the gratification from, did I put a check in the bank today that I can then take out and buy myself something? It's not going to work out for you. It really isn't. There's very, very few, there are going to be the Zuckerbergs of the world that, do those really gigantic businesses, but 99.9% of them aren't. That's not going to be the nature of it. The game, it's the tortoise and the hare. The game is going to go, to the tortoise that just has great sense of urgency. This is the thing Ron said to me, but I really, I got to give Ron my whole credit, but it's he said, Tim, one of the reasons you've been so successful in your life is that you've got a tremendous sense of urgency, which is true. I've always, when I got my mind on something, I really want it done yesterday. But it's combined with a laser focus on the long term. I'm not sense of urgency on what I could get from me tomorrow. It's sense of urgency on what can I do today that's going to take me closer to the bigger goals and the impact and the places that I want to be in 3 years or 5 years. And I get people saying to me, well, like, I'm going to be 62 in a couple of weeks. And they're saying to me, why? Because a lot of people my age have already packed it in, either mentally or they've physically, done it. Well, look, guys, I mean, I have no desire to sit in a rocking chair and reflect back on my past life and define my happiness based on what I've done in the past. With the technology now, I can keep doing this for a long time. So the bad news is you're kind of stuck with me.
So I know you have things today. I want to give a couple shout outs. Bridget Barr has been on with us the whole time. So she's been commenting. She's been like, yes, I need to get smart on my landing pages. No cat urine. She put yucky faces, a whole bunch of yucky faces. Helpful advice, regardless if you want it here or almost necessary. So again, helpful advice. And Debbie Dern Parker is watching and she says hello. So they've been commenting all along. Brandy, I know you have things to say, so I'm going to let you take it from here.
I just wanted to touch on something. When we work with a lot of the girls in the Girls on Fire, or we work with clients in the Phoenix Factor, one of my favorite things to ask people is, where do you want to be in 10 years? And, they'll immediately go to money, like what they want to make. And I'm like, no. I'm like, money offers you freedom and options. I want to know where you're living and what you're doing and how you're spending time with your family, and maybe you have a charity or you're out, helping the community. I try to get them to understand that huge aerial view where money is just a teeny tiny part of that, because we can get caught up in it. I'm a single mom. When I lost my business, I had to put food on the table and there was no one else to help me. So, I went through those moments of that. But the other big thing you touched on, I think, is when you ask someone what they do, because of social media, because everything's so saturated right now, you have to be really crystal clear, and you can't be afraid to niche down. So, we've obviously, you've seen the changes in our LinkedIn. We've changed our name, we've changed our type. We have just got more and more and more clear, and it showed up for us. It's really made a huge difference in everything for us.
Yeah. No, you're spot on, and you're right. You guys have, especially since the two of you have come together, it's just amazing to see the growth, in both of you. And it really, when I look at the way, so many people are approaching the businesses, Brandy, I mean, money just keeps coming up way too often. Money's a renewable, resource. It's everywhere. Like, money can be replaced, time can't. Time with your children or whatever can't be replaced. Money can always be, replaced. I mean, another question that I'd like to ask is, depending on the age, but ask someone what they would hope their legacy to be. What do you want when you're, because usually they're somewhat younger than me. What do you want when you're 60 or 65 or 70? What do you want, And nobody's going to say, well, I want them to know that I made $7 million or something stupid like that. You don't, and it's just crazy how, but again, I think the parents, certainly the boomer generation, has to take a big responsibility for the mind-numbing brainwashing that we did on an entire generation in terms of their path to success was, go to school, get good grades, get into college, get a good job, climb the corporate ladder, retire, put your feet up, and this was what their expectation was, and we never challenged them. And now, Vanessa, your point about parents going to colleges and universities and complaining about grades. I mean, good Lord. I mean, we got to go back to elementary school and start letting our kids solve problems. My son came home in third grade from a small rural community, and he'd only been living in this community a couple of years. So he didn't grow up from the beginning with some of the people there. And he came off the school bus one day, and he came in the house, and he was in a bad mood. And Mom, Deb, and I said to him, "What's wrong?" And he said, "Nobody likes me." I said, "Well, you better go back to school and figure out why." Now, he did.
I love it.
By the time that kid graduated from high school, I remember picking him up. We went to pick him up the last day of high school, and I see this kid coming out, because you can imagine it's their last day. They're free. So he's on rollerblades with a great big super soaker squirt gun, racing around, squirting water and everybody. Everybody's high-fiving with him, and he's got all of these, these friends and stuff like that. A few years later, one of our neighbors' children was at that school, had the same issue. The mother went racing into the principal's office, demanding that the principal instruct the other children to like her child.
Oh,
Good
wow.
luck with that.
Okay.
So you can imagine how that went. Now that kid really has suffered, and I see the way that person is living her life right now, and I can trace it back to that kind of parenting. Parents have to give their kids the space to make mistakes, the space to solve their own problems. Like, don't let them be harmed. If they're doing something where we know that their safety is involved, of course we have responsibilities. But you got to let them take responsibility.
So Tim, I'm just thinking, so my daughter last year, this is right after I worked with Brandy and we partnered up. My daughter came home because Brandy had been coming over a lot and we've been talking about it. My daughter comes home and she goes, "Mom, someone came to me," and she goes, "You're really weird." And you know what my daughter said? "Yep, I'm weird. That's okay. You're just not part of my tribe."
Bam.
We see that's a level of self-awareness almost no kid has. That's parenting. We've got to teach our kids that. And it's interesting on my show. I think it was Ron Malhotra, but Seth Godin both spoke about it. That we've got to, as parents. I mean, in fact, Seth came right out and said that once your kids are about 8 years old, it doesn't matter what you tell them. Your opportunity to tell them and have them just accept things as a mother or father is those first 8 years. From then on in, the only thing they're doing is watching you. At that stage, the only way you can, instill that value is being okay with being different and unique yourself, And these are the things that we need to be focusing on. And frankly, who gives a crap what the grade is anyway? I loved when Seth said to me on my show, he said flat out, the only thing an A represents at school is proof that your child is willing to comply and memorize.
Oh,
True.
hell yes.
True. Yeah. Yeah.
That's it.
I can say I would love for my son, because he is different in such a great way. I've actually been exploring over the next year or two, putting him in a position where he can learn all of those other things, maybe engineering. He likes to break things down, and he's never going to learn any of that at school. And for those other kids that are complying and that are doing as they are told, they think of it as weird. And I think he's a genius. I know he's a genius. So I'm like, I would rather give him that opportunity. I think homeschooling, the parents, I used to say, I don't know how in the world you do that. But now these days I'm almost like, how do you not do that?
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because, like you said, the education system tells our kids to sit down at a desk and be quiet for 8 hours of their day. Mm-hmm. But why does it have to be a desk? I mean, if they work better on the floor, if they work better outside, like literally, why does it have to be a desk? Because you said so. Because you told that child, and that child is complying with you.
Yeah. No, I mean, and we saw that even for the earliest days. I mean, and I do think at least we've observed big differences between our son and our daughter. Our daughter had no problem going in, sitting down, but Jonathan didn't want anything to do with it. He was constantly getting timeouts because he just didn't want to sit still. And
that's my daughter.
In a sad way, though, we're getting kids being identified as having behavioral problems that are really just rooted in the fact that they don't like this structured model, which is boring, redundant, and really, forcing them to, a square peg into a round hole. So it's so beyond time that we shake up our education system. And Brandy, I think you're right. I think we're going to see an explosion of homeschooling if our school districts do not find a way to better accommodate.
Vanessa?
I think you're 100% right. And I know it's 1:45, Tim, and I know that that's that time for us to go. Can we do really quickly, though, some rapid fire questions really quickly?
Go for it. I'll try.
All right. So everybody, we always throw out rapid fire questions to Tim and all of our guests to let them see a little bit behind the scenes. So we had talked about this before we went on air. You said you were dealing with alcoholism. And do you ever indulge in beer, wine, or spirits anymore? And if so, which one?
Red wine.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we're in. Yeah, there we are.
You're in our tribe.
You're in our tribe. Your turn.
So I really, the one thing I really want to know, I've never been to Canada, and I'm originally, I was born and raised in Alabama, so deep south. So if I were going to visit you, I want to know what the, juiciest dish that we would go out to have. I mean, what's the tradition around there? What's the really good, place to eat?
Well, you'd be spoiled for choices where I live, because Nova Scotia, the coast that I'm on, is home to the world's largest Atlantic lobster fishery. So we would definitely be chowing down on lobster in some fashion or another.
Oh yeah, I'm in.
So we know you also probably read a lot. With red wine. And your daughter Denise said she would serve rappy pie. Yeah. With everything. So I want to know from Denise whether rappy pie is part of the wedding. So,
it's going to be just in a tiny little way. The thing is that her partner's family is from away, and rappy pie is an acquired taste. Its texture is very different, and not everybody likes it. So I believe she's going to put a little appetizer portion out so people can taste it, and then let them have something else.
So I want to know, and everybody wants to know, right now, what is your book of choice? What are you reading?
Yeah, the reading I'm doing these days is business. I'm just right in the middle of one by a fellow Canadian. His name is Drew Dudley. It's called This Is Day One. I don't know whether I'm seeing it there, but
I just heard about the book.
He's a really cool guy. I had him on. He's going to be coming up on I've recorded the interview with him, but an amazing guy who tells a story about a lollipop. And it went on to be one of the top 15 most motivational, or voted one of the top 15 most motivational TEDx speeches in all time.
We have to look it up.
Gotta go watch that.
All right. Do you have anything else for Tim?
No, I'm good.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Tim. Where can everyone find you on social media and on your website?
Yeah. So, screwthenaysayers.com is where you can get all the information on what I do and links to the website and everything. The podcast, of course, is on any of the, the places where you would normally listen to podcasts, and the website. And, I'm in terms of social media, for me, it's mostly LinkedIn. Always there, always happy to connect with people on LinkedIn. Just Tim Allison. Allison with
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. Again, it is.
Yes.
It has been our pleasure, Tim, to have you on FireDay here with Brandy and myself. And you are?
Brandy Holloway.
Yes, and I am Vanessa Lane. Brandy is the CEO. I'm the Chief Creative Officer for the Phoenix Factor and Girls on Fire. And you are Tim Allison with Screw the Naysayers. Let me tell you, if you haven't connected him, you are missing out. And the podcasts are off the chart. You could listen for hours, and you should, because the wealth of knowledge between him and his guests is astounding. Again, Tim Allison, Screw the Naysayers, Brandy Holloway, Vanessa Lane. It's been an amazing Fire Day. We will all see you online the next week. Have a great day. Bye.